Alright, for our first video, we're going to go over a brief overview of the 3-inch octocopter frame and how to assemble that. This is the build that I finished for the build video itself, which is not quite ready to be released yet, but the one I'm doing today is just going to show you how to basically assemble this frame. You can see I've got two 4-in-1 ESCs on the bottom here, with the flight controller mounted just above that. I've used the frame itself to strap a buzzer on the front. Heat shrunk to the bottom of this plate is my TBS VTX. Heat shrunk to the bottom of this tab in the back is where my RX sits. And then how I soldered both of the 4-in-1 ESCs together with a cap on the back. Alright, some more details to come on this one once I finally get that other video edited and put together. The frame itself comes in relatively few pieces. We have our top plate and our bottom plate. Slots for the battery strap. We have a 20 by 20 mounting pattern as well as a 30.5 by 30.5 mounting pattern. This is the tab where the RX will basically heat shrink or double side tape to the bottom here. In addition to the arm plates, we also have a pair of camera mounts, one VTX mounting plate, and we have two separate VTX antenna mounts. This is going to depend on what type of antenna you choose to use when doing this build. So if we're going to use an SMA style antenna, we use this antenna mount. We basically clamp that mount between these two plates, like so. If we're going to use any other style antenna, then this plate can be used, and we can simply zip tie that antenna to this plate to run it off the back at the angle we need. Okay. As far as hardware goes, this hardware kit is also available. The 3D printed mount comes with the frame itself for the RX antennas, and these two washers also come included with the frame, as I found they were necessary to mount my camera at the front. I could not find a screw that was M2 by 7mm, so I needed to use a small spacer and got away with using an M2 by 8mm. So in the hardware kit, you have two 25mm standoffs, four 30mm standoffs, two M3 nuts, and two M2 nuts. We have two M3 by 12mm bolts. We have 8 M3 by 10mm bolts. 4 M3 by 6mm bolts, and 4 M2 by 8mm bolts. Alright, in order to assemble this, we're going to start with our camera mount plates and our M3 by 6mm bolts. Insert one of them through the camera mount plate, and then use the 25mm standoff to thread onto that bolt. We use a second bolt here, and our second 25mm standoff. Then we need to decide which of the RX antenna mounts that we're going to be using for this build. And once we've slid that into place, we slide the second camera mount over the top, and then back to these M3 by 6mm bolts. And now our camera mount assembly is finished. So in order to actually slide this onto the arm frame themselves, you need to line up these camera mounts with the slots in the lower frame. And there are slots here that slide over the frame, so it actually goes together pretty simply. Now we do have this piece as well. This is an optional piece. It doesn't need to be used. If you are using a VTX that mounts directly on your stack, then you may not need to use this plate if you opt not to. If you are not using a VTX that mounts directly on your stack, this is simply here to give us a surface to attach our VTX to. So basically that's going to sit right in the bottom of our camera mount. Then we're going to line these tabs up and get that started, and then we just pinch the front of the camera mount toward each other to get over these posts, and push down, slide back, and you can kind of hear it click into place. We're going to make sure that the camera mount is opened up, as these posts on the side here should fully slide right into the camera mount itself. So now the upper assembly is complete here. Next, we'll use two of our M3 by 10mm rather. One in each of these outermost holes. And one of our M3 nuts on the bottom. This is just to hold that VTX plate in place. Alright, so now we're done with that. Next, we can get the antenna mount mounted to the back. That's going to take two of our M2 by 8mm bolts. I like to get these started. And you will see that the holes from the mount line up with the holes at the back of the frame. So once this mounts to the frame, the antennas are literally fed through these holes on the bottom here. With your RX mounted here, the antennas come up through here and right up through these two sleeves. Once we get that bolt through, we're going to use one of our M2 nuts. Thread that in place. Alright, and then to finish this build up, these plates are basically just inverted. So if they're lining up, that's the wrong way. We want them to be this way. We can start by getting these bolts in place. The lower plate is going to use all M3 by 10 millimeter bolts. And the 30 millimeter standoffs. Top, directly over the top of these. Now the two M3 by 12 bolts go in the front here. That extra 2 millimeters is to make up for the thickness in this VTX plate, the mounting plate itself. And the last two M3 by 10 millimeter bolts go in the back. Right, that is it. It's pretty straightforward. There's really only 5 pieces to the entire thing, so it's not too complicated. These last two M2 by 8 millimeter screws are for the camera mount. What I had to do was slide on one spacer and then push the bolt through. You've also got these two small, I guess, carbon fiber washers inside the kit. These are for the camera as well. They are 3 millimeters thick each, so with this being 25 millimeters wide, this is set up to accept a 19 millimeter wide camera. Alright, so that about wraps it up for the video. If you do have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I will have a link to my Facebook page also included, where you can get more information about the frame. Contact me directly, or if you are interested in purchasing one of these frames, I can get you the information over there as well. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.